This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
What's going on, everybody? Right before you hear the interview, I wanted to let you know that if you're listening to this before the first week of April, that you can get yourself a copy of The Clients for 99 cents. From April 4th through the 6th, you can get a digital copy for 99 cents. The Clients is a fantastic book, which you will hear all about in this interview. So let's support Bonnie and go out and get your copy of 99 cents, The Clients, April 4th through the 6th. Enjoy the interview. Sometimes when we read books, we read about real life situations. Some authors won't go there because of what they fear the outcome would be. But what happens when an author decides to go there and tell an intriguing story that could happen to anyone? You get a fantastic read. Join me as I talk to author Bonny Fawn on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of True Crime and Authors. Of course, I am your man, David McClam. Hey, if you guys haven't done so already, make sure you're following us on all of our social media outlets. You can find one link to the link tree in the show notes. If you are paying attention or have been following along with the podcast this far, then you know it is time to talk to another author. Today, we have a good one for you. Let me tell you a little bit about who we're talking to today. She is an Emerita Professor of Business and suspense author. Over 25 years in academia, her work often included reviewing organizational cases, some of which contain layers of fraud. Hence, the inspiration of her debut novel, The Clients, was born. Truth can be stranger than fiction. Bonnie spends her days thinking up more twisted plot lines, often influenced by real events, and walking her rescue dog, Mr. Kirby, who is beyond reproach. He turns up his nose at liars and cheats. Of course, Bonnie doesn't have the heart to tell him she wouldn't have much to write about without them. She is the author of The Clients, which released August 5th of 2022. Please welcome Bonny Fawn. Bonnie, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you, David?
I am doing well. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll talk about The Clients a little bit. It is a great novel, but reading your background a little bit, being that you are a business professor dealing with cases of fraud, you said that gave, the way to this book. After looking at all that, what made you decide, I've done this a long time, I'll go ahead and write this book about that?
I think just several factors that came together to do this book. And one of them was my teaching in business. And I had experienced at a conference, I met Sharon Watkins. She was the whistleblower at Enron. If your viewer listeners are familiar with the Enron scandal. And that's where a lot of employees and stockholders were defrauded of money from Enron. And that made me think, in combination with a couple of other things, about the idea for this book. So I had met Sharon Watkins, the whistleblower, and I thought she was such an interesting person and that she had the strength to stand up to this large organization. And I happened to meet her and talk to her. And one of the things that she said to me was she had a gut feeling about some of the leadership early on. And she wished she had walked away earlier and that she had these regrets. And that came together with some other ideas for a character that wasn't as nice as Sharon, but based on her kind of business acumen.
So the character that we speak of, I believe, would be Mel.
Mm-hmm.
She's the main character in The Clients. she's a stockbroker who turns into a con artist. So now that you tell me that story, I can see that. Because when I first started reading the book, I was like, she goes from a stockbroker to a con artist. I'm like, she seems like she would be like this really nice woman. And then you start digging into the book, you're figuring out what's going on. So the thing is, so we'll get the elephant out the room, because you wrote this book around the time of the most tragic events in American history, which would be 9/11. What made you think of to use that? Because there's a lot of pieces about 9/11 that is true, that is in the clients. What made you think of writing around that time and that event?
It was something that stuck with me from 9/11. I was at work and I was watching on the TV the tragic events unfold, and a coworker looked at the screen when one of the towers was falling. And he kind of mumbled to himself, he said, "Somebody's going to walk out of their life today." And I thought that was so strange. I thought, why would somebody? And I looked at him and I said, "You mean you're thinking someone's actually going to survive that and let people think that they died in the towers?" And he kind of nodded and walked off. And I just thought it was so strange and cynical. And it stuck with me for 20 years. So this story is about, you learn this in the first few pages, that this woman who's a stockbroker con artist, think of maybe those who are familiar with Bernie Madoff. The walls are closing in. She might go to jail. She has an abusive husband. She's thinking, how can I get out of my life? And then 9/11 happens and she works in the towers, but she's not in the towers on the day. And she uses that opportunity to escape her life.
Yeah, because pertinent to the book, she had just went out minutes before the towers collapsed. She was actually sitting on the bench. But everybody assumed that she was still in there. So it was easy for her to pass off as being dead. So the one thing that intrigues me is, and this happens for those of us around the globe that has children. So she disappears, she's gone, she departed with a lot of money. She's pretty much set for life, right? No one knows she's alive. She can get away with this, but her stepdaughter kind of calls her back. Isla kind of calls her back that way. So the way you wrote that is, we would do anything to escape a life. But when our children is involved, we would give up every freedom that we have to make sure that they're safe. What made you think of that concept?
I thought, what would draw someone back? And I think that's one of the few things as family is, even if you look at Sopranos, right? Or The Godfather, these terrible people, but they still love their children. And so I thought that would bring her back, make her risk everything.
And we do read in the first few pages that her husband, I won't give anything away, but her husband is abusive. That's one of the main reasons why Mel wanted to escape this. I ask all authors this, so I ask you the same thing. It has often been said that when people write books, they write books because of something that they have been through themselves or done. We know your business background. Anything else in the book pertain specifically to you itself?
That's a really good question. I think not really. I didn't have an abusive husband or anything like that, or had any relationships like that. But I certainly had regret. And that's a big theme in the book, is that 20 years later, she regrets being a con artist. She's established a new life in Idaho, and she regrets her past. And one of the reasons she wants to see Isla is because she wants to make sure that Isla doesn't end up in the life that she had been in as a con artist, that her ex might draw Isla into it. So I think we all as young people have regrets. And that's in the first couple of pages of the book. She talks about having regrets.
Yeah, she certainly does. And you can totally tell that she's feeling that. And I think the one thing that makes the clients really stand out is Mel is very flawed. But the thing about it is she knows that she's flawed, and she knows exactly where she's flawed. If you really read the book, I think every character in this book is flawed. And Absolutely. That's the beauty of it, because you can, whether it's a true story or not, or parts of it is or not, it brings us back to current day. And I like reading books that I can sit here and feel like, hey, this all could have happened, or maybe it has happened, right? Because you talk about how certain things end up getting destroyed. Like there's certain evidence that got destroyed because the buildings fell and things burned up. How many times, how do we not know in real life that really didn't happen in 9/11?
It did happen in 9/11. I did a lot of research. And in 2001, they didn't have all the electronic backup systems, or they didn't use them. And there's actually a number of government documents. The Security Exchange Commission lost a lot in the towers, and other businesses that were there, financial businesses. It's kind of amazing because today we would never think that could happen because everything's in the cloud. But they actually did lose a lot of documents.
And I always have the feeling, being that I work in technology myself, that 9/11 shaped a lot of the ways that we do use technology now when it comes to backing up businesses. I think everything that happens in the world aids to that, especially what we just went through with the pandemic, right? So you have a lot of people now that are doing things they never would have done, companies that's branching out and now people's working from home. I think technology changes, unfortunately, when we have tragedies. And 9/11 being the biggest one, I think that's what changed that a little bit. So this is actually a page turner. It's not what I would consider a very long book. According to my Kindle, it was about a 7-hour read. So you can read this book in the amount of time you do 8 hours of work, 340 pages. Let me be the first to tell you, if no one else has, I appreciate that, because as somebody who reads a lot doing this particular job and my job that I work regularly, I like to pick up a book that, for one, I can feel like I can get through, but it's intriguing enough and it's not that long. Has any of your fans or readers told you they feel like your books are too long or too short?
I don't think so. I haven't had a lot of that. Nope. They mentioned short chapters, but most of them like that. And I got that kind of I read a lot of Dan Brown, and he has a lot of short chapters that are cliffhangers, and I like that style.
All right. And some people feel like, well, you're just doing the inevitable, right? Like the chapter is really going to be long, but you're breaking it up in 3 or 6 minute, 7-minute chapters. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as if it's a 6-minute chapter, I may be able to get through 3 of those chapters, where if the chapter was 20 or 40 minutes, I may only be able to do 1 in the sitting that I'm able to do. So I do highly appreciate that. So when it comes to Mel and new books, are we going to see more of her? I do know you have a new book coming out next year called The Assistant. Can we assume that that is the sequel to The Clients?
No, it's a different story. I like standalones, but I have had a lot of readers say they would like to see Mel again. What's intriguing with this story is that I could do a prequel, because the story starts in 2022 and her thinking back to 2001. But in between time, I could do something there or afterwards. So there probably will be more. I've got ideas for 2 more books, but my next book is not.
Well, I would love to see a prequel, because I would love to know a lot more about Mel's life. You're not the only author I've talked to that's writing about real life things. So I want to give you this encouragement too. I know sometimes you guys get hit on the nose a lot because you're writing about things that people think you should be quiet about. Mental health is one, domestic abuse is the other. What I want you to know is that when you write about these things and people's picking up your book, you're actually helping people. Whether it's real or not, they can relate to it. As a child and a survivor of domestic abuse on behalf of my father, when I read these books, I can relate to what's going on, and I can see how, if I felt like I was all alone in this, just what you're writing would help me. So I just want to encourage you that if that's your thought pattern, keep that up and put it out there in the world.
I definitely always want to include real life and what people go through. And like I said, maybe personally I didn't go through that, but I've certainly known people who've gone through that. And this is what books are about, right? That we can all identify and put ourselves in the place. And hopefully some healing, I hope, maybe a little.
I said at the beginning that you are a professor. I'm assuming that you are still teaching at this point?
No, actually, Emerita means retired with full benefits. And after 25 years, I had this opportunity with a great pension to retire and start writing. So that's what I did.
Do you miss teaching at all?
Yeah, I do. I really loved it. It was great, but I wanted to take this opportunity to do something I wanted to do since I was a kid. My parents said when I was little, don't do writing. There's no money in it. So I can tell them like 35 years later, they were absolutely right.
So that's a good segue. That brings to my next question. So a lot of the authors I'm talking to are independent authors, you being one of them. If you were able to go to a big publishing house, would you do that or would you stay independent?
It's an interesting question. In the beginning, of course, I thought, I'll just write a book and some traditional publisher will pick it up. But then I went through the journey and it's very difficult. It's kind of like wanting to be an actor or a singer. The odds are about the same of getting picked up. But then I just tried the indie route and I like it. There's a lot of pluses to being your own boss, to being able to make your own decisions, whether it's the cover, whether it's the marketing, the interior of the book, you get to make those decisions. It's a lot of work, but you're not under contract and you can write what you want to write.
So speaking of covers, your cover is very nice. Who did the cover for you?
Demonza. They're a company down in New Zealand. They did a great job.
Will you be using them for the remainder of the books that you write? Probably,
yeah.
So can you tell us anything about The Assistant that comes out summer of 2023?
Oh, yeah. That's a fun book. Okay, so you're in Southern California.
I am.
And the assistant, she's a personal assistant to a celebrity power couple, which is part of the Southern California lore, right? All the celebrities and their assistants. And I just thought it would be a really fun book. Actually, I won't be giving anything away. So the power couple gets murdered in the first page, and Lainey is seen as a suspect. But really, she finds there are other forces at hand, and that the power couple, the last producers of their movies, might be spies. And Lainey gets caught up in this. And she was this diligent underling, the Carson of Downton Abbey, the butler, kind of the assistant. And she finds herself caught now in this exciting adventure, but thriller. And so now she's the lead. And it's also about her growing as a person. And that's what I try to do in all my books. So through this danger, she's got to build her self-confidence and get through it, as opposed to just being the underling who always had to take all the grief from the narcissistic celebrity bosses.
Here at True Crime and Authors, I read a lot of books. Every author that you've heard me interview and everyone that you will hear me interview, I've either read one of their books or I'm in the process of reading one. So how do I keep up with all of the books that I read? Well, that is where the show's sponsor, Catch Creations 614, comes into play. Catch Creations makes digital handmade planners and journals, and for those who want something on paper, printables as well. She can make anything from My Little Pony to Black Panther, anything that you can creatively think of, Catch Creations 614 can get it done. With excellent customer service and excellent communication, the owner, Kristen, will make sure that your journal comes out right and perfect the first time. And for those who are listeners of this show, you will get a special 10% discount when you use the code TrueCrime10. Catch Creations, best handmade planners, journals, and printables in the business. Check it out now. All right, and we're back with Bonny Fawn. We just heard her give a little synopsis of what The Assistant will be about, coming out summer of 2023. Be sure to look out for that. I do have this question because Kat Creations, who's actually our sponsor here, she's on Instagram. She always does this thing when she reads a book and she puts together a cast of actors that she felt like would be suitable to play each role. If you had to cast the clients, who would you cast to be Mel and beyond?
Oh, Julia Roberts. That's who I thought of. She's a little older, mature, but she would have the emotional grit to do the character well, I think.
I can see that. I can certainly see that. All right, so we know the assistants come in. Do you have any more books in the pipeline? What's next for Bonny Fawn?
Well, like I said, I do have the ideas about books that are follow-up to the clients.
So in closing, is there anything that you would like to say to your fans and readers out there?
Oh, wow. Well, pick up the clients. I hope you'll enjoy it. And I hope people remember the victims of that day that we never forget. I don't think all the answers have been found there, which is another thing that spurred my writing of the book. With the 2017, the victims did a lawsuit against the Saudi government in search of more answers of who financed the attacks, and we've never found that out.
I totally agree with you on that. I've always been one that has felt over all these years that there's a lot about September 11th we don't know. I'm still like many Americans. I burn a candle in remembrance on that day. And I always tell everybody, never forget. This is something in American history that we never can forget. And I do think there's a lot of cover-ups out there. And people like you writing books like this, sometimes I feel brings us closer to whatever that is. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
All right, Bonny. Well, I thank you for coming on the show today. It has been a blast. I've read the clients already, waiting for the assistant to come out. If you ever want to come back on the show, let me know. Maybe when your assistants come out, we can have you come back on. We can talk about that again.
Be awesome. Thank you, David, and congratulations on your new show.
Thank you, Bonny. I appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, you heard that. That was Bonny Fawn. Go pick up the clients. You can find it on Kindle Unlimited. I know you guys are going to get tired of hearing me say this, but I repeat it every time I have an author that's on KU. She does not get paid for anything unless you read the book. Downloading it does nothing. Make sure you read every page so that Bonny can get paid for the work that she does. All right, so I hope you guys are all being safe out there. If you are in California like I am, please try to stay cool. And always remember, be humble. A little love and compassion goes a long way. And this is the podcast that brings two passions together as one. I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.